Welcome back, everyone. Today I want to talk about when it's a good time versus a bad time to consider buying a new vehicle, a new truck specifically. We're going to be using my new to me 2022 Ford F-250 in this video, and my original truck I had, a 2005 Silverado. And I'm going to kind of discuss my logic and reasons why I would, get a new truck or not get a new truck. So we'll jump right into it. The first bad reason that I wouldn't get a new truck is for tech features. So this is a pretty base model. It's an XLT F-250, but there's a center screen. You've got your Android Auto CarPlay capable infotainment system. You've got remote start and a little bit of heated seats and stuff like that. Power folding mirrors, power extendable mirrors. Even this XLT, you got the cross traffic alert, you got backup sensors. Even though it's a base model, it actually has a decent amount of tech features. Now, my '05 Silverado, of course, as you can imagine, really doesn't have much of any of that. Now, this is a pretty high trim truck, so it's got the leather seats. It actually has heated. It's got power mirrors, and it actually has a power dimming mirror, but there's no screen. There's no screen in the gauge cluster. There's no remote start. There's no cross traffic alert or backup cameras or anything like that. This is still, despite the kind of fancy interior, a relatively simple truck. And a lot of people get caught up in the tech feature game. And if you really want to, that's fine. But I just think you'll wind up kind of upset because you'll buy a new truck and then, 2-3 years later, the next new thing comes out. And, it is what it is. They upgrade it, and then you're behind again. So try to be satisfied with what you got, what you have, what you already bought, and make sure it fits your needs, of course. But don't always be looking for the newest, latest, greatest thing. The second reason I wouldn't buy a new truck is because you got scared of some recall or technical service bulletin, but you're at a very low mileage. So if it's a recall, theoretically they're going to just fix it, right? Obviously, some recalls, they don't maybe fix the way they should. But if you have a TSB and you're at a super low mileage, generally these types of things affect vehicles at higher mileages. So, for example, everyone talks about the 4L60E in these trucks as being so incredibly terrible, which they kind of are. However, despite that, and despite me towing with it and doing a bunch of different things, I think this truck might have been plowed with at one point in its life. This 4L60 lasted 35,000 miles. So, as bad as it is, that's still a decent amount of mileage, right? The original 4L60 lasted. So, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Don't let the recalls and stuff like that completely ruin your ownership experience. Every vehicle is going to have problems. Nothing's going to be perfect. Try to, enjoy it despite those things. The third reason I wouldn't go out and sell your truck or buy a new truck is if you kind of wish you got a different trim level. So this sort of ties into number one, but I did keep it split up to keep it different. And again, this is an XLT, and we just saw the Chevy has leather seats and everything. So there's a little bit plainer of a truck despite having a couple more features. It's hard plastics and not as much leather and stuff like that as a Lariat or a King Ranch would be. However, here's the thing about trim levels, okay? And we'll just look at the Chevy real quick. Right, leather, it's arguably nicer in some sense. Yeah, obviously it's older, but it was a much higher trim when it was new. And the big thing is, unless you've just grossly under-trimmed a truck or over-trimmed a truck for your liking, maybe then it's worth it. But if you're a trim or two off, it's you can probably deal with it. And you can save yourself a lot of money by not, especially if you bought brand new. Let's say you bought a brand new truck. It was an XLT. You're like, I got to have a Lariat. So now you're going to go in, take the depreciation hit, go get yourself a Lariat, and spend more money on top of the already depreciated truck you just traded in. It's just, you're going to kill yourself financially. Unless if you're super, super wealthy, then who cares? But I'm talking for the average Joe who's, let's be honest, kind of barely able to squeeze one of these trucks, into their life cost-wise. Number 4 reason not to buy a new truck, this is a big one for me, is fuel economy. So let's play a game of pretend and make believe that this Silverado was, a 2022 Ford F150, let's just say. So this is a Ford F150 in imaginary world. This is an F250. If you bought an F250 and said, wow, I really don't need all this capability. This truck is giant and, has all this towing capacity I don't need, payload capacity I don't need. Maybe you overbought a little bit. And so your only reason for upgrading is you're like, wow, I want to downsize back into a half ton and get a smaller truck. If that's your only reason for downsizing, you want better fuel economy, that's not really a great reason to downsize. And here's why. Kind of goes back to my point in the last one. You're going to have to eat the depreciation of that 250 you just bought, especially if it was brand new, and then go out and find a 150 and then, buy all that, pay all the taxes. Most states have some type of sales tax on vehicles and things like that. And by the time you pay that sales tax, by the time you go out and source that new vehicle, your time, your effort, money, loan costs, this, that, and the other thing, maybe interest rates are different, you're not going to save anything because the damn gas is going to add up, isn't going to add up probably to more than what that cost savings or cost increase of the new truck was, right? So you got to be careful that you don't wind up spending more money trying to save money, because gas is just not as expensive as people think on a per mile basis. It just isn't. If you're in California, because the gas is very expensive, maybe it's a little different, but in most states and the rest of the country, it's just gas is never really a huge part of your bill, except that you're on the fringes, right? Incredibly bad fuel economy, incredibly long amount of miles per year, driving a lot of miles per year, that sort of thing. Lastly, the worst reason to buy a new truck is that you want to look cool. So I think this is a cool looking truck. Most people would never even see it going down the road. I think the Silverado is a really cool looking truck, just because here in upstate New York, you don't see them in shape, as good a shape as this thing's in. Original door and rockers and fenders, and the thing's in pretty darn good shape. So I think this is a cool truck, personally. Nobody's buying a mid-2000s Silverado to look cool, really. I mean, at least on the majority of people. But I do think it's cool. And but that should never be your primary reason, right? A truck, not anymore in some sense, or at least not for everybody anymore, because they've turned into family haulers and, display pieces. But a truck used to primarily be, something to get your work done, whatever that work is. For me, it's hauling a camper, it's hauling my dog. I've got tools back here, got the jump seat for a third person. I can take this crate out and do 4 or 5 people. I got random dog stuff, tools and fluids in the bed of the truck. I've got this auxiliary gas tank, bowling balls, bins of different things, my hitch. This is a working truck, not a commercial truck, right? I'm not working it like a construction worker, but I'm working it like a homeowner, a guy who tows some things and stuff like that. So that's the primary purpose of a truck, in my opinion. And that's why it's not a good reason to upgrade just to look cool. Trucks are incredibly expensive. Their fuel economy is generally worse than a normal car. They're harder to park. They're harder to maintain. They cost more to maintain. Obviously, I can go on and on. So if you don't need the capability, find some other car, in my opinion, to make yourself look cool or to just use in general. It might even be better for you if you don't need a truck. So let's go on to the good reasons to upgrade your truck. 5 good reasons to upgrade your truck. Let's see. Number 1, this is the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones, I would say. Your use case has changed. So for me, that's kind of true. Well, definitely true. Again, this half-ton Silverado was designed, extended cab door. These were designed very light duty. The rear end on these things, the 10-bolt GM rear end, is very, very, very weak in comparison to a 2500. The frames are kind of small. The hitches like to bend in stock form. This has an aftermarket hitch on it because of that. It's just a smaller, lighter duty truck. Payload's 1,200 some pounds. This F250 is obviously a big, commercial rated vehicle, if you will. We've got this is a 10K rated truck, so it's 3,100 pounds payload. Really, it's 3,600. But the rear axle's, giant, huge rear axle. Frame's obviously much bigger, fully boxed, all that kind of thing. So I was towing at or above the Chevy's max tow capacity and definitely above its payload capacity. And you just can't do that long term on an old truck like that and expect it to really hold up. So my use case essentially changed from when I bought it 10, 11 years ago. And I just needed to upgrade to, accommodate that. So that was a big thing. Another great reason, and thankfully neither of these trucks have this issue, but is any safety concerns. Rust and rot, from that perspective, right, if your truck is corroding away and it's just unsafe anymore. Again, thankfully this thing's been undercoated, so despite being in upstate New York, it's very, very clean underneath. Obviously the F-250 is clean underneath because it's, practically brand new. I don't know if you can see anything, but it's there for you. The other thing safety-wise, though, that a lot of people don't think about is just like added airbags and better crash test ratings. So even these HD trucks, as far as I know, we're going to find this out together, I guess. I'm pretty sure they have airbags in the A-pillars here, I think. And the B-pillars? I don't know, actually. That's a great question. Maybe somebody knows. Do I have side airbags? But for argument's sake, let's just say that it has side airbags. Well, an old truck like an 05 doesn't have that. An 05 truck doesn't have, as modern of airbags. So there's that, right? You've also got a lot less structure here in this A-pillar. You've also got no structure as a B-pillar in these extended cabs, which, can cause cabs to do funny things and crush and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good reasons to modernize from a safety perspective for that as well. I would definitely say. Number 3, unreliable / fear of high mileage. Things are starting to break. That was the biggest reason probably that made me upgrade personally. We've got 254 now on the clock. 255? I think we're actually at 255. I can't remember. But anyway, 254 plus thousand on this truck. It's gone through, it has a new engine, new transmission, new rear end. I rebuilt the transfer case with the pump rub kit, done all different bearings and front end parts and all these different things. And don't get me wrong, it held up super well for what it is. But I was working it hard. It's got really high miles. It's in a very harsh climate. It's just the ultimate trio of, having issues with a vehicle, right? It just is what it is. So this truck, again, much heavier duty, much more made for what I'm doing with it. It's much lower mileage. I've put 20-some thousand miles on it, but it still only has 54-ish and change or whatever it is. And then at some point, it's just a matter of even if things haven't broken, you just kind of have that built-in fear of oh no, what's going to break? This thing has high mileage. At that point, it's probably time to just upgrade and do what you got to do because, you don't want to be breaking down. Trust me when I tell you, on the side of the road, getting towed all the time. It costs a lot of money. It's very, very stressful. It can be very dangerous depending on where you're broken down. It's just not a good setup for anybody to have to deal with. So that's really important. 4, your income has gone up and you're finally in the financial position to upgrade vehicles. Maybe you've been pushing off a little bit, but you got a nice little income bump. And don't use this as an excuse to lifestyle inflate. Save your money. Try to keep yourself from having giant loans and stuff like that. But if you truly need a vehicle and you happen to get a $10,000 a year raise at work, well, heck, that's going to cover a good chunk of the down payment if you have saved some money up, and then help cover the monthly payment, help burn down that loan faster, and you can maybe take on an $800 a month loan for something like this and actually afford it, right? So that's a really good reason to upgrade. And then number 5, which is kind of tied to that, and we'll close out this video, is you're in the financial position to lease or buy every 3 years. You're above average wealthy. And then for convenience sake, you can just have a vehicle that's always under warranty. You really never have to worry about fixing or maintaining on your own. And it's just super convenient. And I think that's a great model. Listen, if you're truly of an income bracket where you can afford to do that, and I think a lot of people think they can afford that and they can't actually afford that. But if you're, making $250,000 a year and living in Ohio or whatever, you probably, if you're living your life in other regards properly, you could afford to lease, or I don't even know if you can lease these, but whatever, buy an F-250 every 3 years. And if you can do that, that's fantastic, and not have to run something for 20 years like this truck. And just make your life easier. Never have to worry about stuff going out of warranty or paying these big bills. You just pay your monthly payment and you move on with your life. So that's always an option. And I think that's a perfectly good reason to upgrade a vehicle. So I guess we'll end this one here. I think I've said everything I want to say. So, as always, thanks for watching. God bless America, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.